Here, Taniyah. Just say a few words, Taniyah. I feel like it should pick up. Here, let's close that one. Okay. Can anyone hear Taniyah? Just say a few more things. I don't know. I ate something for breakfast or. Okay. Damn. Okay, hold on 2 secs here. Desktop audio. You're kidding me. It's telling me it can't find my desktop audio. Oh wait, let's try that. Start talking now.
Hello, hello.
Okay, now it's working. I can see your voice. All right, boom. All right, we're in business. All right. Well, sorry about that, folks. So we're gonna rewind just a little bit because you all heard me. Which is great. I just wanted Taniyah to give her intro again, if she could. Apologies that you have to repeat yourself, Taniyah, but thanks again for doing this.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Taniyah Jackson. You can call me TJ, for easier sayings. I'm here with Nick Taylor, of course, and I'm so glad to be here. And I'm just a web developer, who loves to code and whatnot. And right now, I am just on this platform. First time being on the live stream. And I'm hoping to keep doing this with other people when it comes to live streaming. But for right now, I'm just constantly learning how to code and what type of other languages I can, learn from. And I'm basically just starting and going from there.
Cool, awesome. So I think what we'll do now is I'm gonna open up Dev 2 in the browser, and I'm gonna kind of give a rundown of what we're gonna be working on tonight, and just to kind of give a kind of full idea of what the feature is. Um, okay, so you folks should be able to see dev.2 in my browser now, and on there, for anybody who's a member on here, which I'm hopefully assuming is most of the people on the stream, if we look at, say, the user profile, so here's my user profile, you'll see that I have pinned blog posts that I wrote. This is a handy feature. It allows an author on Dev or any future Forem instance to highlight work that they like. So the issue that we came across was, I'm just going to zoom it in a bit here, is somebody opened this close to a year ago. The suggestion was, can we pin comments for authors? Uh, if I've written a post, so like let's go to my front end dev resource, which is one of mine that I like a lot. If we come down to the comments area, you're going to see there's discussions here, and then there's like threaded comments and so on. But the idea of this issue is, why not allow the author to be able to put a pinned comment either just above or below the discussion here? And the reason for that is the author thinks it might be a comment that is very helpful or useful for whatever reason they deem. And that's the issue that we're going to work on. So uh, we're definitely not going to finish this today, and I'll explain why a bit, because there's a bunch of pieces to this. We need to do the back end part of this, and we also need to do the front end part, and there might even be a bit more to do. What we're going to do today is we're kind of in YOLO mode a bit here because Taniyah is brand new to Ruby, as far as I understood. Is that correct, Taniyah?
Yes,
Yeah,
that is very correct.
yeah. And I myself am very new to Ruby, so I feel like I'm kind of in the hot seat in a good way. Um, but basically, this is going to be just a fun thing to do. We're going to see how far we can get, and we're just going to look at the issue a bit here. So, as I mentioned, the gist of the idea, I think it's pretty clear now. People just want to pin a comment on their blog post, uh, and it doesn't even have to be, from what I've understood in the comments and stuff. It doesn't even have to be the author's comment. It could be like, "Oh, Taniyah wrote a really great comment on my blog post. I want to pin that because I think one, it's either a great comment or it brings out something very relevant to what I wrote about." And you can see here, there's some suggestions. Even Taniyah chimed in here, talking about has similar stuff like in Stack Overflow or on Medium's UI. Um, so we're going to get down to the implementation of this, but we're going to talk a bit about the feature first. So um, because you're pretty much brand new to Ruby, and I've barely got any under my belt, we're just going to talk about a few things first. So I have done backend development, but it's been mainly in .NET and Node.js, so no Ruby backend stuff for me. But um, as most people who are probably chiming in on the stream here know, Dev and Forem, the code base, are using a Ruby framework called Ruby on Rails. I'm not a Rubyist, so I can't say for certain, but I feel like it's probably the most popular framework for developing web applications in Ruby. Pretty sure like big companies like Stripe use it, Shopify, GitHub even uses it. So it's got some big backers behind it. And we'll talk a bit about this. We talked about this briefly a bit in some of our chats, Taniyah. Um, because I've actually known Taniyah for a little while now because she joins a virtual coffee group I go to, so that's how I actually met her. But yeah, we're gonna talk about just a few concepts first. So the Ruby on Rails framework, and anybody who's on the stream who is a Rubyist or a Rails pro, feel free to chime in if I'm saying things incorrectly. Um, but basically, uh, the Rails framework is Ruby on Rails is using the MVC architecture. MVC stands for Model View Controller, uh, and this is a pretty popular pattern that's been used in I don't know how long it's been around, but it's been around for a while. I've used it in .NET using ASP.NET MVC. But we'll just kind of talk a bit about what that architecture does and gives you. And yeah, so basically, you have three pieces you have the model, the view, and the controller. So, in terms of the model, think about that as the data you need to show somewhere. It also contains business logic. So, like for example, if the data was an address, it might include validations to ensure, like the postal code or zip codes, right? And then we have a view which is just expecting data, and it just says I have some data and I'm going to render it in this view. And the views in Rails, at least, it's typically I think herb templates. There's so many more. Chuck Smith, who was on the previous pairing, talked about some other ones, like you can use Haml. I think you can use handlebars too. They're just basically templating frameworks that get data and they can generate HTML for you. So that's what the view does. It's just saying I've got some data and I need to fill it out in my template to be able to show a web page, for example. And that's what you see in the browser. But to connect all these things, you need something called a controller. So that's the third part of it. And so the controller, think of it kind of like it's kind of like the person in the middle, almost like somebody directing traffic. So yeah, the way it'll typically work is, uh, you know, if you're say you're in a web browser, you click on something, you send something to the web server. It'll be some kind of request, and it'll say like, I don't know, like show me my favorite bookmarks or something. So then it goes to the web server, and then in the MVC architecture, it'll end up going to the controller of that particular that manages that particular view, and it'll go like, oh, okay, the view says it wants to have this page. So the controller goes, okay, I'm going to go get some data for it. So it'll kind of say, go to the database by talking to the model, and then it gets some data back from the model, and then that model information comes back to the view, and then you see the web page of your favorite bookmarks or so on. That's kind of like the high level, quick elevator talk of what it is. Uh, I'm sure other people could probably explain it a lot better. Um, so let's uh, so that's all pretty clear, or any thing any holes in that story there, Taniyah, or does that seem okay to you?
No, that sounds pretty good.
Okay, so basically what we need to do now is in our case, we're going to be working on the back end. So before we even before we even do anything with the view, which would be the UI part, which will probably be another PR, there is work to do with the controller for getting these comments and stuff. But even before that, I think for today's stream, we'll focus on the model. And the model, at least in Rails, out of the box, the way models are handled, it uses active record. Active record is what's known as an object relational mapper, or ORM for short, ORM. And what this does is it kind of, there's a few reasons why this can be good. It Rails supports multiple databases, so like MySQL, Postgres, I think Mongo. I don't know how many it supports because I'm still new to it. Um, but what something like Active Record does is it allows you to kind of write code to just say go get that information out of the database in more kind of like human readable terms, I guess. Like for example, you could say like user dot create, or like if you wanted to create a new user dot delete, and you're not writing any SQL, or sorry, destroy. That's what it is in Active Record, I think. You're literally not writing any SQL code with this. I know you've done some SQL because you've worked with MySQL in the XAMPP stack, or WAMP or LAMP, or whichever whichever operating system you're using that stack on. Um, so the cool thing about something like Active Record is that whole part is abstracted away, so we can really focus on building out our application, and that's something that Rails, from what I've seen so far and talking to people that I work with, uh, it's to make things easier. Doesn't necessarily make everything easy, but it definitely helps in making things easier. So an active record is just one type of object relational mapper. I don't know what other ones exist for Rails, but in the .NET ecosystem, it's typically the Entity framework, which is something that Microsoft built. Uh, I can't remember what I don't I never used an ORM in Node, but I, I don't know. I might have, yes. Say I use Sales JS, which is also an ORM, I believe, it's been so long. Um, but yeah, the whole gist is you want to be able to write web applications as easily as possible, and all these tools in the Rails ecosystem help you do that. So that's kind of what we're going to tackle today, is working on the active record part of it, and kind of figuring out how we can improve the comment model, which is what we're going to be showing. So like each post has a bunch of comments. So there's a comments table in the database, and through active record, that's accessed as a comment entity. So, or it's like the like literally the code. It's all based on conventions. So, for example, if the table in the database is called comments, when you're writing Ruby code for it in Rails, you would say comment dot some method or whatever. And through these naming conventions, because Rails is the way Rails works, again, in my very limited experience, is a lot of it is based on convention. So it's able to figure out these things by the way you write variables and code. Um, you can definitely stray away from that, but I think the default is for people to leverage the naming convention so that they don't have to do all this extra work that typically isn't necessary. Um, so yeah, so that's pretty much it. So let's take a peek at the issue, and I'm gonna just open up. I have some notes because I had to read up a bunch on this because there's just a bunch of stuff I wasn't familiar with and stuff. So let's go back to the issue here. Let me just change screens so we go back to the browser. Oh, we are in the browser. Okay, cool. Okay, so rhymes. You can see my browser. Hey, Taniyah, or oh no, you're not seeing the stream. Sorry, I can share that on the Zoom. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so you should be able to see what I see now, Taniyah.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So there were some suggestions here. So Ben Halpern, who's one of the co-founders, had suggested a one solution, which was adding a pin boolean field to the comments, and then my other coworker Rhymes, he had realized that for the profile, so like what I was showing before here, just in the user profile where we have the pinned comments, sorry, the pinned posts here, he was like, well, why don't we leverage that and we can use it for comments as well. And I spoke to Michael Cole as well, who's another coworker of mine, and I think he was kind of on board with this too. And this is where I started reading up a bit because, like I was telling you, Rails and I guess Active Record as well. Then they rely on these naming conventions to figure out things. So uh, let's just we're gonna go through this class here. I'll explain a bit about it, and we're gonna see how we can potentially use this to do our comment pinning. Sound good?
Yep.
I know I'm talking a lot here, so feel free to chime in here. There's uh, I'll be honest, I told one of my coworkers we were going to be working on it, they were like, "Oh, that's a good issue," but he said it's a little tougher. So I'm still happy we're working on it. So, but just to let you know, just have fun. Don't sweat anything about it. Okay.
Oh, alrighty.
Okay. It's my first coffee today, which is not that great. Which, anyways.
Hmm.
Okay. So basically, the profile that we saw on the website there with the pinned items, there's a class called profile pin, and this is inherits from application record that you see here. application record is the, I believe, base class for active record. So this is what allows you to get all that magic from the ORM there. And we'll just see what it offers in here. So another thing about, so this is a class for a model, just to just to be clear. Um, there's a few things that it offers in active record. There's, you can add properties, you can add associations. So, and the associations are literally like what you see in a database. So like if this comment is associated to this blog post, that's where the association is. You know, there's probably a table that says, you know, like the ID of the uh, article is associated to that comment ID, and that's how you can get these associations. There's
Oh,
also validates here. Validates is just, these are methods that, or yeah, methods are just simple checks to ensure that what you're going to save is actually valid. So, like for example, here, and this is just Ruby syntax that I'm still getting used to, but uh, validates, and it's saying the profile ID field, its presence needs to be true, meaning it has to exist. So, um, and that's because the pinned articles that you see on that profile page, we need to know what the profile ID is to associate it. So it's that user. There's some other things here, and these are just all things that validate. Now, this is where this kind of blew my mind a bit when I was talking with my coworker about this, because I didn't understand initially when he said um, we're going to use the profile pin uh, class here to also use it for comments. I didn't understand because typically when you have associations between two tables, like so like the profile and the comment, that there's, you can't, well, you can have multiple associations, like you can have other stuff associated to the profile, but uh, the way this thing is working is this polymorphic true. If we go into active record, just to uh, just pull it up here, and I'm sure people who are very familiar with Ruby, this is just like your run of the mill stuff, but whoops, polymorphic. But basically, what this does is there's a bunch of things here. There's naming conventions and stuff, but the what it means is in this particular association, it can, we can actually make it an article that links to the profile, but we can also change it to say that it could also associate to other things, and that's what this polymorphic is. If I zoom in on it, I've had
yeah.
to do a lot of reading on this stuff, but yeah. So that's like it says here: a model can belong to more than one other model on a single association, and this is what I mean, because normally when you have multiple things associated to something, they're different associations. So like, you know, I'm I'm an article and I'm associated to this. I'm a comment and I'm also associated to this. But in this case, it's using the same association, but through the naming conventions, it's able to figure out what table it's associated to. So it's kind of like you can say this association can be associated to a billion things, and I hadn't seen that before. I also haven't, I mean, aside from the entity framework in .NET, I haven't really had much more experience with these ORMs. So I don't know if this is something specific to Active Record or if other ORMs do this as well. Because the way I always used to do it, it was always like the table was associated to this other table. You couldn't use the same association to make multiple tables associated to it. So it kind of, and this is where I got lost when I was reading this stuff and I was speaking to my coworker. Um, So let's go back to the code here. Once again, I've got my notes and everything here just because, like I said, I had a bit of a hectic day. um,
So,
so
excuse me.
yeah,
My
go
bad.
ahead. No,
I
no,
was,
go ahead, Tony.
I was just wondering, like the way you were saying it, is it because so the you respond to a post, the comment, and the reason why the profile is links, is it because so when you, I don't know, click the person who commented that they'll just reroute them to like their page, like their profile page, or is that something different?
Sorry, can you repeat that again, Taniyah? Sorry.
Well, that's fine. I was just wondering, this is it for when the person who commented on the post, if you click their comment, you'll be routed to their profile page? Is it for that, or is that something different?
No, this the profile pin. It's really like if you go to their profile, you'll see the list of pinned. It think of it kind of like, I guess it's like a pseudo model. Like it's probably my lack of Ruby knowledge here, which is what's making me in the hot seat today. But it's really just to say like I want to go get some pinned articles, and then so in the pro that's what that profile pin class does. And so it just says get me the list of articles that are pinned, basically, and then it knows to put them there. um, and somebody was just popping in the chat there. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Riobin. Th- that's where I'm kind of confused. Like, it's it's like a dynamic foreign key. Uh, sorry, tonight I'm just answering somebody in the chat here.
Oh, you're fine.
Uh,
Pretty
from what
cool.
I've understood. Yeah, so you've done some database stuff. So basically, when we're in the when you have an association, you typically have, so like say the article has an ID and the comment has an ID. If you want to associate that, the comment, for example, its ID could become, uh, or no, sorry, if we did it the other way, a comment, you can have many comments associated to an article, but if you want to know which article it's associated to, you need a reference to that article's ID, and that would be in the comment table in the database as a foreign key, because that's how you're making the association. But in the case of this, like I was saying to Real Bay in the chat, from what I can understand about the polymorphic association that we were just looking at, it's still a foreign key, but it's the foreign key from another table. So uh, I'm guessing Rio Ban. I'm not positive because I'm still fairly new to this stuff. I would guess that the foreign key would have to be the type, which is the table name, and the key, like the ID, and then that would make the actual foreign key. Because otherwise, if it was just the ID, if you had two different tables and they both had the same ID, you wouldn't be able to figure out the association because it wouldn't know to go to which table. That's kind of what I've understood about it. Whether that's the actual case or not, we'll see. We'll probably find out whenever we get around to talking about this in the comments in the PR. So I'm gonna pull up my notes here. I don't have a screen for this, so just let me pull it up. Okay, I'm sharing it with you here tonight, but I'm just gonna put it on the stream as well. So let's just change this. I'm gonna add another one here, just so people can see what I'm looking at. And let's add a screen share. Yeah, let's do that. That's not what I wanted to do. just trying to show my notes. Let's do, how do you do a window text? Main screen share, sure. Okay, that's good enough, I guess. Let's see if I can get my notes in there. Okay, people can't see people can't see my notes. Okay, but we'll just talk it through. You'll be able to see my notes, Taniyah. Let's go back to here. Let's go back to where we're in the browser. So we'll leave that up. So getting back to what my coworker Rhymes was saying about this was here. You can see my notes there. Here you go. Yeah. So he was basically suggesting we can reuse it, and then there's some things we need to change though. So, and this is where some of the magic happens. So if we go back to the issue, so right now this profile pin, pin, so pinnable, from what I understood, is a variable. Well, it's a variable in Ruby, and then that pinnable is kind of what becomes the thing we're going to pin. So for example, the articles on the current profile, that's what pinnable is in this case here. So it's a variable, and the reason why the reason, this is where the naming convention comes in. And anybody in the chat, feel free to chime in, and if I'm not saying this properly, but pinnable is what we're working with. And then you have these two other things down here. You have pinnable underscore ID and pinnable underscore type. So what that means is, through this naming convention, the type in our case would be article right now, but we would want to add comment to it as well. So this is how pinnable underscore type becomes the table comment, for example, if we're going to use it. But when we're on the profile page, it could also be, it's the article. And this is the naming convention. So think of it kind of like pinnable.type equals article, pinnable.id equals 1. So for the first article. But like I was saying before, in terms of those associations, if the pinnable type is, if we want to work with a comment and the ID is 1 as well, that you're kind of in the way of the article, because that already has an ID of 1 too. So we have a pinnable type as well, which is comment. And getting back to the what is it, the naming conventions, article points to the articles table, and comment points to the comments table. And so this is these two things here together is what I would think makes the actual foreign key in there, which is what Ray O'Bain was asking about before in the stream. Let me go back here. Yeah. Yeah, like Ray O'Bain is saying, that's magical stuff. So yeah, like he's saying, it should not add the two foreign keys, but the foreign key and the type. So this is, I don't know, like I said before, I don't know if this is unique to Active Record or not. I hadn't seen this in Entity Framework when I worked in .NET, but yeah, so that's what that gives us there. And then the profile ID here and the profile type, it's the same thing again. So you have this other profile variable here, and it's going to be the same idea. So like before we made our changes, before we make changes, it was really just the article. My coworker Rhymes had put this in here, the user and the comment here as the suggestion. But what this means here is the profile ID is the user, so it's user ID, and then the profile type is the user table. So user points to the type, which means these two things together also create an association, which is the user table and its ID. So all that to say, I know I've been talking a lot here. It's a lot to absorb, uh, but we can with these four lines here, we can say I want to associate an article with a user, as in a pinned article, but we could also say I want to associate an article to a comment, as in a pinned comment. And these six lines all together is what creates that magic, and that kind of blew my mind a bit, and it's a lot to take in, like I said, but that's essentially how this works right now. And the suggestion was to add these two things, which was to add the article and the comment, so we can do the same kind of idea. um, I'm gonna ask if you're following me here now, because it's I've been talking a lot, so I totally understand if it's I find it a little mind blown when they explain this to me, but
Yeah,
that's essentially the gist of it. Uh,
I'm just
yeah.
taking.
Okay. Yeah. So Railbane was asking about the database to see if we can see that. So we could look at that too after if we have time. Okay, so let's get to actually doing something, because I know we've been talking for a bit here. Um, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over to live share. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen here, Taniyah. But if you wanna, I can send you the link to the issue in the chat there, um, just so you can have it as a reference if you need to look at anything there. And just give me 2 seconds to paste that in there. Okay, so there's the link to the issue we're working on. Now let me go back to the stream, and we're gonna change to VS Code. And all right, I think if you could just send me the link to the live share, or did you do that already?
I yes.
Okay, I'll try it again because it looks like the live share is still hanging. Just give me 1 sec here. Let's go back to that. You pasted that in the chat, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So let's click on that. All right, so we're starting up now. Okay. And then I'm just gonna give a sec while that loads up. And for people joining the stream today, what we've been doing is using Visual Studio Live sharing these pairings. I find it kind of handy. All right, there. All right, it's still loading up here. If we still have problems connecting there, or maybe it's loading up now. Continue as, yeah, I need, it's asking me to sign in again. Sure. Yes, with GitHub. All right. Yes. I don't know why it asked me to authorize again, because I had done this last time, but okay. All right, we're loading up now. All right, cool stuff. We're in business. Okay, I just make sure that we are there. Okay, so everybody should be able to see my VS Code now. Just gonna zoom it in a bit. Gonna close the sidebar. Okay, and I'm just gonna clear the bottom. The host, yes. One of the cool things about VS Live Share 2 is the person that's sharing the session with you is you can actually look at their web browser. It gets proxied through somehow. I have no idea how. It's uh, basically above my pay grade probably. Um, all right, so I just requested access to the terminal. Okay, now while this is going on, we're gonna open up this profile pin. You're gonna have to do it on your end, Taniyah. There's the if you just do Command P and look for profile pin, it should be under app/models. Okay, there, or it's profile underscore pin, I believe. Yeah, okay. I have it open here, but you should be able to see if you want to click in that file. I should be able to see you typing in there too. Okay. Are you in the file too, or?
I don't see the file. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you can open it on your end. Sorry. So in your VS Code, just open up the profile pin. It's profile underscore pin.rb file, and you should probably see a little blinking cursor with my name flashing around. And once you go into that file, I should see yours.
Underscore pin.
Yeah, I'm just gonna answer something in the chat. Yeah, so like Link to 20 was saying, it's Andrew Bone, one of our community members. He was suggesting changing the name of the class to something more generic, which I agree with. So maybe it could just be pin or maybe something else better. We can figure out in the PR what's a better name.
Okay, I think I'm possibly in the right file.
Yeah, I see you. All right. Okay, so in here, yeah, I can see it now. Okay, we're in user now. Let's go back to profile.
Yeah, I clicked the wrong one.
It's okay. I'll go back to it, and if you stay in the file, it should be there. Okay. So this is under. So this again is just naming conventions. The way a Rails application is built out. There's an app folder, and in there you have models, views, and I think it's just controllers. Models, view, yeah, controllers, yeah. So we're working on this model for the application record. So, like I said, we're realistically not going to finish this today because there's just a bunch of things to do. But let's go through it anyways. So this is the original file. This isn't including suggestions that my coworker Rhymes was mentioning. But if we look at here again, you can see here that the profile type, if you see me highlighting it, I'll just make it a bit bigger for the folks on the stream. You'll see that, and there's even a note here, it could be an organization, a tag, etc. So I think when they created this, they were already thinking future-wise that this could be used for other things. So right now, the way it's set up here is pinnable. If we look at the ID again, pinnable ID, this is just the ID of whatever record of the table we're looking at. Pinnable type is the allowable tables that can be used for this pinnable type. And in the original code, it's just the article model, which means the articles table. So what we need to do is, like we were talking, so we can end up renaming some things here because there's a whole other aspect of this that we have to do after, which is a database migration, which we can talk about as well. Um, so basically here I'll let you start typing tonight because I've been talking way too much and I've got to take a sip of coffee. But if you look at the issue, you can kind of see what Rhymes was suggesting in there um, about using, like, we want to basically we want to be able to pin that comment on an article. So uh, where do you think we should go about doing that now? So, like, based on what we were looking at in the issue and talked about.
Pending the well, she said something. The original comment poster, she said something like how YouTube does it. So would it be better to be, the pinned comment to be right under the comment? That was, the base comment.
Okay, okay, you mean in you mean in the UI? Or
So they can see like the comment that they were looking for if they had a question, then right
yeah,
under it, the answer.
yeah, exactly. And then so that's what we would probably see visually in the UI. But to get that information there, we'd need to rework the profile pin here. So um, if you go back to the suggestion that Rhymes gave in the issue and the link I sent you there,
Mm.
there's a section he posted about it 7 days ago. Um,
Oh,
it's like
seven.
you'll see it in the link there. It's right after I commented initially, but uh, since we want to be able to pin the comments as well to an article, we need to allow for the article and comment to we need to be able to create those associations. So we need to update this file here, um, the profile underscore pin. Don't worry about the name profile pin right now, as link to 20 mentioned in the chat. We would probably rename it to something more generic. Uh, but to be pinnable, uh, so for example, the articles are currently pinnable in a user's profile, which is why if you look on line 8 in the profile underscore pin.rb file, there's an article there. If you look after in the inclusion part, do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is also just some, I don't know if this is, I'm assuming it's Ruby syntax, not Rails syntax. The percent %W means word, I believe. And then it's an array, that's the square brackets. But you can essentially put other things here, like you could say potato, for example. You don't have to put the strings in quotes. I think it's just a shortcut in Ruby to avoid having to put all those things. Um, but while we're here, this is where we'll need to say, like, what else can be pinnable, and we need comments to be pinnable. So we would have to add that into the inclusion array here. So
Mm.
it, if you just head in there where it says article on the line 8 there, you could add a space, and then you could add has to be capital C, and so that would be comment. And then what that does is that means now, like, we're not done, but comments and articles could both be pinned. Now where can they be pinned? So if we go up to line 6, where it says validates colon profile underscore type blah blah blah, there's another inclusion array there. So in there we want to associate the comment to an article. So we would need to add in that array there the article, um, and that would be capital. I think there, yeah, typo there. Okay, and then once again, just to reiterate, because this is like a lot of stuff to absorb. It took me a while when I was speaking to my coworkers the other day. So this means now that the articles table, which is represented by the article string here, can be associated to comment below, which is what links the comments table. Um, the only thing I'm not sure about all this is, and I'm sure the Rubyists on my team can clarify it, but I don't know if this means that we could also say, I want to pin a comment on my user profile. Like, I don't know if that's what that allows us to do as well. That's not what we want to do right now. We just want to pin one on a comment on an article. But looking at this, to me it seems like you could also say, I want to pin a comment on a user, which is their profile. So that's something we can talk about in the PR or in the branch in another call there, because we're just over an hour here now. We can go till about 3:30, I think, and then in my experience, we you kind of tend to lose people after an hour and a half. So yeah. So let me just go back to Visual Studio Code. Yeah. So far this looks okay. There's the other part that we need to talk about now, which is we need to be able to create. I'm not sure why Siri is talking to me, but yeah. So the other thing that we'll need to do for this is we're probably going to have to do a database migration, and uh, a database migration. These things exist in any application you work on. Anytime you have to update the database, you have to migrate the data or the schema. But Rails comes with some handy stuff that allows you to do this out of the box. So you can, if you go to the console, I'll let you type because I think there's a bit of lag on my end when I'm connecting to your computer. My internet's pretty fast, but I think the connection between you and me is there's something going on. But you can actually, I think it's Rails DB underscore migrate. I'm gonna look it up in the browser. So just gonna switch to browser view for a sec in the stream, and I'm just gonna Google create migration file because this file you don't want to write it by hand. There's actually Ruby allows you to create it from the command line. Uh, Data migration file Ruby, or I should say Rails. And it's not a Ruby specific thing. It's a Rails specific, or actually probably yeah, it's Rails specific. So let me zoom in here. I'll share this in the Zoom so you see this. Okay. The people on the stream can see it as well, but because you're not looking at the stream. Okay, so here's kind of an anatomy of a migration, and I'll. This is Ruby version 3.2. I don't know why there's not the other one, but I'm just gonna post this in the chat. Yeah, Railband was suggesting pin parent or something for the name of the class. Yeah, we'll figure it out. So here's the link to migrations in Rails. I feel like there's a newer document because this one says 3.2, but anyways, we'll go with this. So what this does is there should be a command line to do it. Let me find the command first and then we'll talk about it. But basically when you run a command through uh, here it is, db migrate. Is that it? Yeah, it is just that. I did it the other day, but essentially, you know how like when you start up the application or like we were doing the other day, you could say Rails console and you could actually go into the server and we could actually look at users and stuff. This is another similar command, except this one is related to the database. Uh, I think it's generate migration. Okay, yeah, that's it. Rails generate. Yeah, sorry. db migrate is when you actually want all the files to run. Rails generate is when you want it to do something. So Rails generate migration. Yeah, that's what you would run. So you literally just type in at the command line Rails space generate space migration, and then what this would do is if we come back to the file here, this zoom bar is in the way. Okay, if we come back here, what it'll do is it'll create a file kind of like this, but the contents will be empty initially, and then in there's stuff you can do like you can say I want to create a table. There's many commands, but the gist of it is it'll create the shell of the file for you, and then you can do whatever changes you need to do in that migration file. So in our case, I think I don't know how much stuff we need to migrate. If I look at my notes, um, where is it? Yeah, I think the one thing that we would have to do is when we run the Rails, when we make these changes, we're going to have to update the index in the database, because if we rename the class and we rename some of the things within the class, it's going to actually change the name of the index, which is the database index, which is what makes the reads of these things fast. So we would probably need to add that in there, I think, too. Um, I know we're not writing a lot of code today. There's just like a lot of concepts and stuff to kind of put in, but we can definitely uh, jump on another call another day, and we'll definitely see more of this stuff in the PR. So yeah, I think that's kind of is essentially what we need to do for the first part. Um, and it would involve the migration. We're not So the migration would be for like something like, say you add a field to a table, you would need to add that in this migration file to say, hey, like the user table now has you know, a pinned pin property, and that would update the database schema, and then we can use it from there on in. But if we come back here, we're back on the website. Yeah, let's go back to VS Code. Um, yeah, so in VS Code, like I was saying, we'd probably need to do some things here. Like, uh, for example, we could change this to like, for example, pin parent, maybe like Railbin was suggesting, and we would rename the file and stuff. If we did that though, which is something we should do, because it's not going to be relevant anymore, because it's not just for profiles. We would have to go in the code and we'd basically have to search and replace everything that says profile pin like this with the same casing and replace that. And then in here, this really isn't, this is kind of like Railbin was saying, maybe it could be something like parent ID. So like this, and then that would mean that this would become parent type, and then this would be parent. This might be too generic, but then this allows us to still create the association, but it kind of makes it clearer that this is what it's being associated to. And then like pinnable could probably still say is pinnable, because we do want to, like, if you literally think like pinning something on like a cork board, we want to pin the comment or we want to pin the article. So I think that would be okay to stay. But by changing these things here, this will change there's a index that gets generated in the database based on these properties, and that's what would have to be changed, like I said, in the database migration we do. And I think if we look for, I don't know if I can do this in VS in live share. Okay, yeah, I can. All right. Yeah, so you can see here, there's a few places like profile.pin here. Those would need to potentially be changed to just like, for example, parent pin. and we could do something like that in the code, or we could figure out what's a good name. Like just calling it pin might be a little too vague. Parent pin might sound too generic. I don't know. Naming things is always hard. Um, yeah, so that's kind of like I know we talked a lot, and I know I probably talked a lot. It's just there's honestly just a lot of stuff to absorb to do what we want to do. The actual changes, like you did here, those two are they're not big changes, but uh, I like the suggestion that Rhymes gave because now we're being able to reuse this code in a meaningful way that it makes sense. It's not like we're just saying reuse this because like maybe two things have it in common. Like it really makes sense. Like what this thing is doing is it's like it's to make things pinnable. So I think it makes sense to reuse it because sometimes when you're building software, you see some similarities in code, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, well that looks pretty similar, so I'm gonna pull it out and make like a function or a method. But even though it's similar code, it might not be the best idea, and that it's always a case of the generic answer of it depends and stuff. But there's a good article on this called "Finding the Right Abstraction." I'm gonna just Google it and paste it in the chat. Right abstraction. It's by Sandy Metz, I believe. Let's see. I mean, there's other articles. It's called The Wrong Abstraction. Okay. I'm just going to paste that in the chat. Good article on abstractions. I know you can't see the chat, Taniyah, but it'll be on there after. Yeah, sorry, Rayobe. Yeah, I get what you mean. Parent underscore ID and parent underscore type is not the actual class name. Hey, what's up, TK? Uh, I'm still getting used to talking in the chat and then doing stuff at the same time. It's a multitasking palooza. Um, so I know we talked about a lot of stuff tonight, and we haven't done a lot of code, but I don't think that's a big deal because it's really more we just want to understand how these things are going to work, and we want to do it the right way if possible. um, I was wondering if you have any other questions because I feel like I've been blabbing for like forever.
Oh, you're fine. About the generate migration.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
I don't.
yeah. So I'll show you an example. I'm gonna kill the live share because I'm just gonna do it on my local one. So just give me a sec here, and I'll show you, and I'll share this on the Zoom with you. All right, let's just open that up. Okay. Okay, why is that? Okay, VS Code. All right, it's loading up. Perfect. Okay, and you see my VS Code? Oh wait, that's not the one. Hold on a sec. I gotta get to my actual local. I'm mistyping and Visco is showing up instead. So if you're a Visco, okay, I don't want to connect to this. I want to connect to Forem. So let's do that. Okay, and let's make sure that that's okay. That's what we see here. Okay, cool. So you can see my VS Code there tonight.
I don't actually.
Okay, I'll just make sure it's in the share here. One sec. I'll reshare it for you on Zoom because you're not seeing the stream. Code insiders. Okay, you should be able to see it now.
see it
except
now.
except I opened the wrong project. I'm in the Forem browser extension, not Forem. Oh, okay. It's I got all messed up because I had to restore my machine with Time Machine and my directories are different and stuff. Okay, let's just go back to this. I think what we'll do is we'll go. I'll just show you how the Rails migration for generating a file works, and then I think we'll wrap up from there, and then we'll continue working on this in a PR and also like another Zoom call if you need. So basically, you can say Rails. So Rails is kind of the command line for doing stuff in Rails. So you can say like Rails console, and it will start a console. Don't mind all these errors you're seeing in my screen. There's something with my local setup. It's always warning me about gems. But so running Rails console, I can get to a command prompt, and then uh, I can look at stuff like I can say like user dot first and stuff. Um, Except it's taken a second. Okay, so we're here. So for example, like I was saying, user dot last. This is what I was talking about with the object relational mapper, the ORM. We're saying I'm saying get me the last user in the database, but you can see under the hood it's actually running SQL, and that's that abstraction I was talking about. Okay, so let's get to the Rails DB migrate because that's what we really want to do. So Rails generate migration. I think I have to give a name. I really got to sort out all these warnings. It doesn't affect my development, but okay, I gotta give it a name. So let's say profile pin migration, for example. So what this is gonna do is it's actually gonna generate a file. Okay, now you see here, I'll zoom in on it. But once it finished running the command, it created this file here, db migrate. And now if you come here, if you see on the right here, I have this changed file if I look in Git here. So now I'm going to open it. I'm just going to close the side. Oh, actually, let's go to the actual file. B. And let's close that just so we can see more. So basically, it generated this file for us. So this is something you shouldn't type manually. But then in there, you can do stuff like, for example, profile pin, and then you could do whatever. Whoops, not prod file. You could start writing stuff that you would want to do that would eventually change the database. So like stuff like adding fields. In our case, I think we're going to need to rename the indexes. So stuff like that. And one of the cool things about the Rails migrations too is there's like a rollback. So like say you mess something up, and you can even do this in production code, is like say I ran this migration and then we realized that something was wrong with the migration. You could actually you could actually say roll back that migration, and you would have like another this is the change, but then you could do, I think it's def down, and then and maybe it's that, or there's a rollback command. I'm still kind of new to this, so um, but essentially that's what it does. It helps you generate the file in the proper way. um, and what you notice as well is you see there's a timestamp in the file name, and this is important for when you want to roll back things. It's also, I guess, for historical purposes, you can see at what date these things were run, and that's kind of the gist of it. um, yeah, so that's pretty much it. Um, I think at
Okay.
this point we can probably wrap up here. So we'll just go back to the Zoom here. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, cool. Yeah, so just to recap, uh, I know we didn't do a ton of coding today. Like I said, I don't think that's a big deal. Um, I think it was just more about understanding what we need to work on, explaining some fundamental concepts because you're brand new to Ruby and to Rails. And for myself, I'm like still pretty brand new to it too. So I think it was fun chatting and like trying to figure some things out. Um, yeah, I guess we'll wrap up from there. Like I said, we'll continue this. It, I'll definitely do another Zoom call with you to just check up on a couple things, and then we can probably get some semblance of a draft PR up, and hopefully my other colleagues who are way better at Ruby than me can take a peek at some of this stuff and provide some constructive feedback. Um, I just wanted to thank you for being on the stream today. And uh, folks, if you haven't already, give Taniyah a follow on Twitter. It's up in the chat there, but I'll post it again. And uh, just wanted to re-mention that you are looking for your first role. Um, is there anything in particular about your first role? Like if you had a ideal, like this is what I want to do. Anything specific, or is it just really like I want to just get a like a web dev job, or you don't know, or
Well, honestly, I would be fine with the front end, just front end development job, but if there is like a gaming development position open, I would also like that.
oh, okay, that's cool. I know one of the people in our virtual coffee. I think her name's Patrice. She's into gaming. Be kind of cool to talk to her, maybe. Uh, Also, if anybody knows of any gaming roles open, I guess hit up Taniyah. I just wanted to say thanks again, and thanks so much for joining me. And I will definitely see you in a virtual coffee.
All right, man. Till then,
Yeah, take care.
you too.
Bye.